President Biden now announcing the pardons of thousands of people who were convicted of simple possession of marijuana. He wants states to follow suit. NBC's Josh Letterman is near the White House now with more on this. And the president is doing a couple of things here. It's not just the pardon. He's asking governors to do the same. He's also asking the Secretary of HHS to review how we classify cannabis, marijuana in this country, pointing out in a tweet thread that is just out now. Again, this is all breaking in the last couple of minutes, that marijuana is classified on the same level as heroin. He wants his administration to take another look at that. Josh, this is big news.
It is big news. It's clearly the biggest step under the Biden administration so far on federal marijuana reform, Hallie. The president saying in a video that was just released by the White House, too many lives have been upended because of our failed approach to marijuana. It's time that we right that wrong. This decision coming just about a month ahead of the election, with President Biden making that move, as you said. He's going to issue pardons for everyone who has a federal charge for simple marijuana possession. And the White House tells us there are about 6,500 Americans who fall into that category. He wants governors to do the same because the vast majority of convictions for marijuana possession are at the state level, not the federal level. And then one of the most significant things the administration is doing is really pushing the Attorney General and Health and Human Services to rethink marijuana as Schedule I under the Controlled Substances Act, which is something that has really prevented marijuana over the years from being able to be tested as a potential medical treatment because it says that there's no accepted medical use for marijuana, and also has classified it as a drug of high potential for abuse. Now, we should note, this is just about a month before the election, the president taking a move likely to be very popular, particularly with younger voters, shortly after he had another move on student loans that was also very appreciated by many younger voters. The White House asked just in the past few minutes why the timing of this now. They say that this is a commitment President Biden has always made, that he would work to make sure people aren't in prison simply for marijuana possession. But at the same time, we know this is something that people like John Fetterman in Pennsylvania have been pushing President Biden to do. It's clearly something that's going to add to the factors that are motivating Democratic voters to go to the polls, at least according to what Democrats hope, as the president makes this significant move. Still, he is not eliminating all marijuana laws. We should be very clear about that. The president saying that laws should remain in place that deal with things like trafficking of marijuana, as well as selling it to people who are underage, Hallie.
He's also specifically, Josh, citing the inequity present in these convictions for marijuana possession, too.
That's right. President Biden is pointing out the fact that black and brown people are disproportionately incarcerated for marijuana crimes. He says that is part of what he is trying to target in creating these federal steps that will help to erase some of those convictions for people over the last 100 years. They say there's 6,500 of these people who have these federal marijuana possession charges, Hallie.
I want to just make one point clear, Josh, because you said it, and I think it bears repeating here. This again, what he's doing, pardoning prior convictions, federal convictions of simple marijuana possession, asking states to do the same, asking governors to do the same. That's a piece of the story that I know you and our team will be following up on. And then this idea of how you schedule, the schedule classification of cannabis here. I've done some reporting in the last year, specifically with veterans who have basically all but begged the administration to take this step because they say, and there are many, I think, groups of people who are suffering from maybe physical issues, et cetera, who have found that cannabis helps from a medical perspective. That is their anecdotal lived experience of this. And I talked to several who were basically begging the federal administration to do just this, because without a change in the classification of cannabis, it's hard to study it. It's hard to get it as a prescription, even in states where taking cannabis is legal. So when you look at the potential impact of what the president is doing, it could be quite significant.
It could be really significant, and it is a shift for this president. Joe Biden is not someone who has been a major champion for his whole career of use of marijuana. He was the only Democrat in the last presidential primary who opposed full legalization of marijuana. He supports decriminalization. He says people shouldn't be behind bars for this, in part because of some of those uses that you were just laying out, that so many Americans say anecdotally they have these strong medical benefits. But clearly, Biden taking a step in the direction that a lot of liberal Democrats have been calling on him to take for years, toward a decriminalized policy towards marijuana at the federal level, at least, Hallie.